Hello. Wherever you are, whatever time of day, be welcome. I want to talk today a little bit about immigration. Here in the United States, the immigration system has been broken since I was a little kid, and I'm 63. Ronald Reagan did a little bit to help with it, allowing a path to citizenship, but for the most part, in my entire adult life, the system has been broken. And people will say, well, my ancestors came here legally. They all need to come here legally. And I can understand where people come from with that. But let me remind you what legally meant back in the olden days. When my ancestors from Ireland, Scotland, England, and Germany came to the United States, it was just, don't be sick. If you showed up and you were sick, you got a chalk-marked X on you, you were X'd out, and you were sent back because you weren't healthy and we were not going to accept sick people. Other than that, we pretty much took everybody. Now, some of my ancestors came here long before the United States. They came here during the colonial period. And again, it was just, are you willing to get on the boat and go over there and serve either as an indentured servant for a period of time, or did you have enough money to buy some land and be able to do that? And again, you just had to be healthy and willing to go. With the Chinese Exclusion Act, we started fencing people out. Oh, no, we don't want those people. And unfortunately, the United States has a long history of racism and nationalism. And when I was growing up, we used to call it WASP culture, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. If you were not White Anglo-Saxon Protestant and male, you were not going to have a position politically of power as I was growing up. Catholics, nope, you guys, we don't trust you papists. Orthodox, they weren't even sure what Orthodox were back then. Had to be, pretty much Methodist or Anglican or Episcopal or Lutheran or some other mainline Protestant denomination when I was growing up to have any sort of political power and authority. And that has changed more and more. The racism has not. No, those people are the wrong color. Those people don't speak the right language. By the way, the United States does not have an official language. That was left up to the states, and we have several states that have multiple languages. Louisiana has both French and English. New Mexico has Spanish, Tewa, and English. Think about that for a minute. We have 500 plus recognized tribes of indigenous persons within the United States. All of their languages predate Spanish, French, and English here on the continent. And we get all caught up in what might be called Christian nationalism, where we want Jesus to be blonde-haired and blue-eyed and speaks English as if he were speaking directly out of the King James Bible. And guys, that's just not the truth. Jesus was Jewish. He was very likely dark-haired, dark-skinned. He spoke Aramaic and Hebrew and maybe Greek in his daily life. Might have spoken a little Latin. That might have been used a little bit in Jerusalem, but probably Greek more than likely. That half of the empire spoke Greek more than it spoke Latin. So what did Jesus have to say about immigration? Oh, Jesus didn't have anything to say about immigration, I'm sure. Yeah, he did. His most famous parable in many respects is called the parable of the Good Samaritan. And you need to understand, Samaritans were not Jews. They were not accepted. They were not considered appropriate people. But in the story, it's the Samaritan who takes care of the injured man. And Jesus asks, so who was neighbor to him? And of course it was the Samaritan. The Gospels respect people outside of the Jewish tradition. Okay? Matthew's Gospel talks about those who traveled from the east to seek this newborn king, while the local authorities were plotting to kill him and get rid of him. Herod is trying to do him in because he's going to be the king of the Jews. Meanwhile, these people, these magi we call them, came from the east to seek him out and pay homage to him. Jesus heals. Jesus teaches. People who come towards him. Okay, this Decapolis, these 10 cities that were in that area, 9 on the wrong side of the border because, Jerusalem's the only city you should go to. Well, Syrians began to trust him. A Syrophoenician woman with a sick daughter convinces Jesus to cure her. Changes Jesus' mind. Jesus says, I'm not going to take the food away from the children and throw it to the dogs. And her answer is, but even the dogs get to eat the leavings from the master's table. And from that point on, Jesus talks to everyone and not just the Jews. He goes to Nazareth, his hometown, and there's just problems because people don't want to hear him. They're like, isn't that Joseph's son? Don't we know him? We should run him out of town. Talks about how prophets do not get listened to in their hometown, and that's exactly what happens to him. But prophets get listened to by foreigners. The widow of Zarephath, Naaman, the Syrian. You try and tell that to the folks in Nazareth, they really want to throw him off the cliff. Later, at the crucifixion, it's a Roman centurion, one of the guys there to prove that he's getting killed, who says, truly this man was God's son. Jesus is a friend of the foreigner. Jesus talks to all the people, not just to the Jews, not just to his group, not just to the folks who already agree with him, but to the people of the world. If that's not an opening for immigrants and strangers, nothing is. And remember, and I've told you this time and time again, Jesus calls us in his great new commandment, the Mandatum Novum, to love one another as he has loved us. Please God, let it be so.